I've already talked about most of this. If you are going to do anything in China, please patent it, please trademark it, please copyright it. Chybridge Law Firm is a sponsor of the China Sourcing Information Center. She's my attorney. I have a number of Chinese patents for products that I'm selling. She's my attorney. She's great. Sophie Mao is her name. Contact her. You know, protect your intellectual property at all costs. Let me go back. I didn't include this slide, and I don't know why. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with PowerPoint. One of the things to do to protect your design is, you know, a patent is a good thing, a trademark is a good thing. All of these things are necessary steps. But a great way to keep a secret is to keep a secret. And by that I mean, if you want to work with a company like PassageMaker, the way that we do it is we compartmentalize the supply chain. So, for instance, if we manufacture vacuum cleaners, well, the guy who does the housing for the vacuum cleaner doesn't know the guy who does the motor, and doesn't know the guy who does the caster, and doesn't know the guy who does the hose, because they're in completely different, some of them are in different countries. But they're in completely different provinces in China. They're not the same factory. We didn't just show up at a factory and drop them a design database for an entire vacuum cleaner and say, here, make this. We went to them one component at a time and said, okay, I need a motor. This is the motor. This is the specs for the motor. Here's a sample of the motor. Can you make me this motor? Yes, I can. Okay, great. Factory number one. I need a rotomolded housing, okay, in two parts that's going to form the canister for the vacuum cleaner. Can you make this rotomolding factory? Yes, I can. Okay, that's supplier number two. Supplier number one is in Malaysia. Supplier number two is in southern China. They're pretty far away from each other, and they don't know each other. And they're not going to know each other because we're going to have the stuff brought to a central location where we can do the assembly. Now, you don't have the infrastructure that PassageMaker has, and I'm not saying you have to work with us, but use that same mindset when you're doing this, okay? If you have intellectual property that you're worried about, whether it's a complex multi-component design, whether you've designed a new piece of electronics or a new consumer good or a new homeware good, you know, product that has multiple components, or it's just the label that's sewn in the back of your clothing, okay? If the label is your intellectual property, your brand is all there is to it. Now, you know, look, they make bikes in China that look a lot like Harley-Davidsons, but they're not Harley-Davidsons. The name matters, okay? Coca-Cola is not the same thing as a generic soda pop. The name matters. If you're going to start a fashion line, and I've heard a lot of people come by the booth saying, I'm in textiles, I'm in clothing. Okay, well, if the label on the garment is what's important, then keep that away from your supplier, or keep it compartmentalized so that they're not tempted to make knockoffs. One great thing that I suggest people do is if you're going to source clothing, source the clothes and sew the labels on in South Africa. You know, bring them in blank, put your label on them, now it's your product. Okay? You can do the same thing in China, but I don't have a slide for this, but keeping a secret from your supplier is not the worst thing in the world. Keeping them a little bit in the dark is actually to your advantage. Okay, give them the information they need to do a good job, but you don't have to tell them your entire business strategy. You don't have to tell them, you know, everything about your company. If you're concerned about them knocking off your design, or they're concerned about them pirating your brand, form a trading company. Call it Bob's Trading Company, and buy everything through Bob's Trading Company, and then take it back to your warehouse in South Africa and sew on whatever the name of the company is, Gold Lily Ladies Clothing, all right? Sew on the Gold Lily label in South Africa. The Chinese supplier is only ever going to see Bob's Trading Company, all right? Same thing in reverse. I don't know what the laws are like in South Africa. Maybe someone can tell me, but in the United States, all shipping information, all paperwork is public record. And so I've seen it in the case time and time again of people spend thousands of dollars to set up the Chinese supply chain, and then what happens? They ship in their first order, their competition goes online, looks and sees where they bought it from, and goes straight to that factory and buys the same thing. Okay? Or, worse yet, their customer goes to that factory and buys it direct and cuts them out. Okay? So one thing that I would suggest is if you don't want to work with an agent like PassageMaker, you know, when we export your product, we're the exporter of record. It's our name on the shipping paperwork. And we're a dead end for anybody trying to find out where that came from. If you don't want to work with us, take the lesson to heart and maybe set up your own trading company. And you call it Bob's Hong Kong Trading Company. And you ship everything out of that. And you ship that direct to Bob's South African Trading Company. And so anybody who's trying to figure out where this stuff is coming from isn't going to find much. Okay? It's all perfectly legal, but it's going to form a firewall that your competition and in some cases your dishonest customers can't see through. Okay?